and the eternal talent, Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy. I apologize to our dozens and dozens of listeners all over the Russian botnet for our absence for now about 3 weeks. We had some stuff get in the way, including I finally managed to find a good source and acquire a copy of the Unspecified Disease of Unknown Origin about 3 weeks ago. And I was in no condition to be doing the show, unfortunately, as a result of being very, very sick for a little while. And then I moved house just to keep things light and airy and buzzy. I moved straight out of isolation, literally into moving house the next day because that's what I do.
You know how to
and that was exhausting. So you had to work stuff, like people actually expecting you to work for money.
You know what? I don't like that whole idea of having to work to earn money. I don't think there's a future in it, honestly.
No, I don't think I can do it anymore. It's my noob out of it, a la Peter in Office Space. But so we apologize. We are bringing it to you as soon as we can. This will not be my normal version of the new studio, electric Firebrand studio, or whatever we're going to call this one. It's only about the fourth studio I've had since the last 3 years. But unfortunately, the
Moon Age Daydream Studios.
There we go. Oh, I like that. We will not be. It's next door actually, but we had a booking. We had a double booking this week. You know, when you're as successful as our studio is, you have to put up with these sorts of things. So, unfortunately, I'm using a backup machine in a different room, so the sound quality and the video quality isn't potentially isn't what we've come to expect recently. What they would have come to expect when we began recording this on pretty craptacular equipment. But it is what it is, and we just couldn't not share our thoughts with you about what we've been up to for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. And we've got a bit of a packed show, actually. So obviously we've got our chain review of the week. And the last time we did it, which was Mutiny on the Bounty, Travis chose The Guns of Navarone. And it's been a while. We had to refresh ourselves on what actually happened because it's been a while since we watched it. I have taken in 2 new releases on Disney Plus of Lightyear and Prey, the new Predator-based movie. Travis has checked out The Prestige, Who's That Girl? Trainwreck. We both checked out the new big movie on Netflix of The Grey Man. And I have got a little bit of a tease or a taster for my further review later on of Netflix The Sandman, as well as I finally experienced PlayStation VR. So I've got a few things to say on that one.
Wow. I didn't know that was out yet.
Yeah, it is.
Is this the original one or is this the new one?
This is the PlayStation VR Model 2, but not PlayStation VR 2.
Right, because I was reading something today that everyone's expecting that to drop next year.
Yeah. They haven't announced any more information beyond, yes, it's a thing. It's got OLED screens in the visor. It's got head tracking. It's going to be fantastic, I'm sure. But it's probably going to end up costing about $900 minimum. So you're going to be spending more on the VR than you are on the console, and they're probably going to be just as hard to get as the console.
So that's if you can get your hands on one.
Yeah.
Which is the main problem with most things these days, hardware related.
Yeah.
But you don't seem to have had that problem. I guess that's because you're in the industry.
Well, I managed to get hold of a PS5 purely because a customer walked in a few weeks ago and said, "Oh, I just saw they're live online." I said, "Oh, excuse me." I ran out into the corridor to get a signal and placed my pre-order finally. Like, yes, okay, now I can serve you. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about that with the PS5.
Well, you got to take these opportunities when they present themselves if you really want one of these things, because they are as rare as hen's teeth still 2 years on. Anyway, should we crack on with things that people actually listen to us for?
Should we start with The Guns of Navarone?
Let's do that. So, The Guns of Navarone, or Navarone. I always thought it was Navarone. But
Yeah, I the reason why I say Navarone is purely because it's me trying to make Richard from Bottom sound posher, because he does this bit in it where he's doing charades, and he's got a broken finger and his finger's sticking out like that, and he's just doing this and going, "It's the guns of Navarone." I know that he's saying it wrong, so Navarone, I guess, is the right way of doing
I'm
it.
not really sure. Either way, that's a very deep cut from a show that not many people remember. So well done. The Guns of Navarone was made or released in 1961.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was the highest grossing film the year it came out. It is set during the Second World War, starring some pretty decent cast: David Niven, Gregory Peck, Anthony Quinn. They're your big name actors. Richard Harris was our link to this film from Mutiny in the Bounty. And the plot synopsis: a team of Allied saboteurs are assigned an impossible mission: infiltrate an impregnable Nazi-held Greek island and destroy the two enormous long-range field guns to prevent the rescue of 2,000 trapped British soldiers. Based on a book by Alistair MacLean, directed by J. Lee Thompson, who is a name that is not instantly familiar to me. But it was has done some pretty famous stuff. Directed the original Cape Fear and Conquest of Planet of the Apes, which is one of the Planet of the Apes sequels, which the original sequels, not the garbage ones they've released in in recent times.
They're not garbage.
I'm not a fan.
Well, you're the curmudgeon of the show, so you're allowed to have that opinion.
So we have sort of commented on this when I selected it, but it kind of reminded us of Saturday afternoons or rainy Saturday afternoons where you got stuck inside and to watch the craptacular TV that was available to us when we were younger.
Yeah.
And somehow programmers in the UK and Australia seem to share a similar prerogative where it was Westerns and war movies that took up those rainy Saturday afternoons. And it did really bring back that feeling for me. But I think it underrated this film. It's actually quite well done. It's a very long film. It's about 2.5 hours. I would argue too long. I'm not entirely sure the story supports a plot. It really doesn't. There's a whole lot of fat in the bone here.
It's nice to know that it's a tradition that Hollywood has had and will continue to repeat year on year on year.
It's like people come to me, oh, well, the directors these days of their long movies. I'm like, hang on a second. We just watched Mutiny in the Bounty recently. That thing went for almost 3 hours, and it was fucking boring and did not need 3 hours. So it's cyclical. It's come back around again where untalented hacks like Matt Reeves take far too long to tell very simple stories. Sorry to Matt Reeves.
Yeah, but they have to keep reusing the riff from Nirvana to really make it poignant and pertinent.
Bring back the 90-minute movie for me. This one could have done with half an hour cut out of it. But what I guess one of my main takeaways from this film, which surprised me, was the really heavy anti-war sentiment to it. It was actually fairly cynical about the process of a war and the way it's being persecuted by those in power. By those in power. I just kind of expected a gung-ho, action-oriented, Great Escape war movie, but I didn't expect the anti-war message to be as prominent as it was.
It's definitely, you said about The Great Escape, which is borderline celebration of the war and the struggles and strife of, in a very entertaining way, of prisoners of war. Whereas this, there is no celebration of it. Everyone is cynical about their position in the armed forces, going from the guy who kind of pulls everyone together at the very beginning. What's his name? Hang on. I'm going to just go and get it right now because he is quite a famous actor. Yes, James Robertson, who plays Jensen. He's kind of cynical about it. He's very pragmatic with sort of like, yes, I know that they haven't really got a chance in hell to do this, but, we've got to do it. And he's cynical and negative about it. And everyone we meet has got that kind of I'm fucking tired of this kind of attitude. But at the same time, it's like, but for the greater good, I'll fight on in my way kind of attitude, which is hugely controversial considering when it was released and the general kind of vibe and expectation of what a war movie was back in the 1960s and 70s. It was, yeah, these are our heroes. This is the greatest generation and all of that stuff. Let's celebrate them. There's
That cynicism about war didn't really seem to, or at least seep through into the popular zeitgeist until it was the Vietnam War era in the late 60s and early 70s, right through to the late 70s. You want to talk about things like Oliver Stone's Vietnam films and the Deer Hunter. Even the first Rambo film's quite cynical about that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
But not common, I would imagine, 15 years after the end of the war itself. That said, though, I don't know how you could quibble with it, considering a number of members of the cast were veterans themselves, including Anthony Quinn, who served in different roles during the war. I think he was in. I think I read that he was in Albania or somewhere crazy like that.
Yeah. It was somewhere that it wasn't where you traditionally kind of expect war things to go on.
Well, that's the thing about a world war, isn't it?
It happens everywhere.
It tends to sort of break, a bit like the unspecified virus of unknown origin. It sort of gets around. Sir Anthony Quayle, sorry, not Anthony Quinn, I get the wrong actor. Sir Anthony Quayle, who's in the film, spent part of World War II in Albania, organising guerrilla forces. David Niven wears a light infantry cap on his beret. This is the regiment that he was commissioned into in World War II. So those are just the two I remember off the top of my head from reading about it tonight, but a number of members of cast were actually veterans. So if a bunch of actual veterans are starring in a film saying war's a bit shit, I don't know how you can go diss that really, but it seems to have gone over people's heads at the time, from what I've read, that people seem to think it was just an action film. That it kind of got missed in the mix, that it was actually the undercurrent of anti-war sentiment.
Yeah.
Which is why Gregory Peck apparently just agreed to do it, being a pacifist. One question for you, though, is that my initial thought was like, oh, why is an American leading this delegation of British soldiers, British and other European soldiers, and no one's ever actually addressed that point? Apparently he was supposed to be British. Did you realize that?
Yeah, I read that in the trivia, but it was just like, no, I'm just not even going to try doing an English accent. Like, okay, fair enough. Own it.
I guess so. And there were some pretty bad Aussie accents at the start of the film, I should note.
I think that was one of the ones that Richard Harris was trying to pull off.
I think it might have been Richard Harris. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. I mean, again, there's probably a great deal of Australians living in the UK, or because this was shot on location in near Greece somewhere, I think, where the fictional island of Navarone would have been. Yeah, sure, you could have found an actual Australian, I guess, but they probably weren't as famous as Sir Richard Harris. So that's potentially why. Apparently, the character's nationality in the book was a Kiwi.
Even harder to come by.
So essentially, this is a little bit, starts out a little bit like your heist film kind of setup, where, as you sort of said, what's his name again? Robinson.
Hang on. James Robertson, Jensen.
Puts together a crew. I would have really loved to have seen someone, you son of a bitch, I'm in. That he puts together a squad of different sort of soldiers whose task, as we sort of noted, is to infiltrate the island of Navarone, controlled by the Nazis, which has 2 radar-guided super guns, that is preventing the British Navy from evacuating 2,000 troops from Crete or something, because they'll get sunk by these guns, which are basically defending the only way to get to these soldiers. Now, the reason why Gregory Peck is included and chosen to lead the mission
Mm.
It's discovered the only way to infiltrate the island is via a sheer cliff,
Mm-hmm.
and he is, an expert mountaineer of
Mm-hmm.
sorts. And he is considered potentially the only person who could scale those cliffs, and those cliffs being unguarded by the Nazis start the infiltration process of the island.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Quinn plays Colonel Andreas Stavros,
Mm-hmm.
who is Greek, I think, from memory. He's a Greek soldier, but he's like also a mountaineer of some description, of some fame, and is sort of portrayed as being sort of a rival, I guess, or having a beef with.
Definitely, yeah. I don't think he was a competent climber, but I don't think there was another climber that they were talking about, but he was like 6 days travel away, and they weren't able to do it because of this planned British fleet coming in. So Gregory Peck's character, Keith Mallory, is the only one that was close enough. The difference is Stavros and Mallory have got this history where a mistake that Mallory made cost Stavros' family, and Stavros found out and has basically got a death debt
A
to him.
vendetta at the end of a war. When this war is over, I'll kill you. This is a
Yeah.
spoiler, by the way. We don't learn this until about 2 hours into the film, so we've just spoiled a 60-year-old film for you.
No, it's not. They talk about it like on the boat on the way in before the shipwreck is
They
like
talk about them having a beef, but we don't find out what it is until later, right?
yeah. I
Uh,
think we could spoil this movie. It's okay.
yeah. But they have this beef as this aggro. We have the knife guy. We have the explosives guy. We have the young, handsome guy who was a bit of a heartthrob at the time. Who was trying to sort of set himself up as a serious movie star. Some of it are really cool names, like the Butcher of Barcelona, who's a knife guy.
But they actually kind of go a little bit further with some of those. Like the Butcher, he is someone who's tired of fighting, and that was the whole reason that he was brought in. Is like, yeah, he knows how to kill people.
He doesn't really want to kill people anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like thinking about it and how each of these personalities had their kind of, this is the role that you're expecting them to play versus this is the background and the current psychological breakdown of these characters. It felt a little bit like kind of an the Bastards. What's it?
Inglourious Basterds.
Glorious Bastards. Yeah, it was like a polar opposite of that, where they were very much celebrating the violence, and they've got like the Bear Jew and things like that, and he just loves destroying Nazi skulls and things like that. Whereas these guys have got that same reputation, but it's like, nah, I'm done.
You know what? He kind of did remind me a little bit of Fox Force 5. The knife guy. The kung fu.
Yep.
Obviously not anywhere as sensationalized, but I wonder the ideas do tend to percolate through, and it's the kind of film that Tarantino would have watched. So maybe he pinched it from here. But that's actually quite a nice element to the film, that there is a little bit of depth to these characters in this sense. We get some backstory of these people that really existed. On the boat, they take a fishing boat to a rundown fishing boat, attempting to try and conceal themselves as Greek fishermen to the island of Navarone, and they're stopped by Nazis on the way, a Nazi patrol on the way, and the Butcher of Barcelona lets the guy get away, and almost lets himself get killed because he refuses to finish the job and stab him properly. And that you can sort of see that feeds into the story later on, where the group starts to lose trust in him, and it all adds to a little bit of a richer picture of who these people are.
Now, side note, that sequence where the Nazi boat is interrogating them was utterly ruined for me, because I saw Guns of Navarone for the first time after watching Hot Shots where they parody it, but it's like going up against the Iraqi army and things like that, and they're going to try and destroy Saddam Hussein. It's just, I was just looking at the whole thing as like, this seems, this is why this is familiar. I can't take this seriously anymore.
The real question is, what were you doing watching Hot Shots Part 2 anytime after about 1993?
Because it's classic.
I do enjoy that scene where Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen are on the boats and they pass each other. I loved you in Wall Street. Gosh, I can't believe I remember that scene. That's it's we are due for part Trey now, I guess, because
Oh,
after
don't
after
put
after,
Trey.
um, after Top Gun Maverick, it's almost time for another military parody.
Oh no.
Maybe Charlie would be available, I'm sure. So they successfully infiltrate the island. They have a number of run-ins with Nazis. They pick up
Mm-hmm.
a couple of guides who are played by Greek women or islanders, played
Mm-hmm.
by, I think it's Irene Pappas and Gia Scala.
Yes.
Only to find out later, dun, 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 one of them is a traitor.
Rule of the game: never trust a local.
No, interestingly, the way they find out that she's a traitor, how she's dealt with
Yeah.
is they don't fuck around, right? Like,
That was a great whole sequence as well.
mm. I won't spoil it in case people want to watch it,
Mm.
but she is executed
Yep.
in an interesting fashion, and I liked that because not you don't like seeing people get executed as a rule, but in a war situation, where I'm a bit of a I actually have a degree in history, and World War II is kind of my area of expertise. Like, if you lived on an island like this,
Mm-hmm.
you were caught collaborating with the Nazis.
Yep.
Trust me, they would fuck your shit up fast and thoroughly.
Yep.
Like, you just look at what they did to the French women who were suspected of sleeping with Nazis. They're not collaborating necessarily, just basically hanging around and sleeping with them. They cut their hair off. You can find pictures of it on the internet. They wouldn't have hesitated in putting someone like that down. And it was nice, authentic touch that they didn't in the end. They did it in a way I didn't expect necessarily, but it was merciless. They really kind of took that hardcore edge to it. This is my first. I should also. This is the first film I can remember seeing taking a slightly different path here. I can ever remember seeing David Niven in.
You know what? I'm going to look at his filmography and see which one was the first one that I saw, because I think of him and I think of Casino Royale, which was 1967. So
Actually, that would have been the first film I saw David Niven in, because we watched that for the podcast about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, we did.
It was fucking awful.
I'm now wondering whether or not I should do my chain movie.
I'd be very disappointed if it's Casino Royale again.
It's not Casino Royale, I promise you that.
He was original choice to be James Bond, I believe.
Yes.
One of our original choices before they went with Sean Connery was David Niven. And in this film, you can kind of see how they might have pulled that off had he been a little younger. He was apparently, all the actors in this film were considered much too old to be soldiers, and the press apparently made fun of him at the time. And I was like, I guess I don't know. Like, they all seem not that old. I mean, they don't seem decrepit. So it's like, oh, and it's like, oh, they're quite obviously too old to be soldiers. And you're like, oh, I guess back in the 60s, you had a better idea about how old a soldier should be.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or maybe we just used the film stars making action films well into their 60s and 70s now, and you go, hey, no worries. Harrison Ford could definitely do another Indiana Jones film. It could be, that long-awaited fourth film.
Nah, he's too old. They shouldn't do it. No.
No worries.
Keep it at the 3.
The 3. They won't do a fourth one. They certainly would never do a fifth one, would they?
No.
Ridiculous. But it's interesting to see him in this. Like, I actually enjoy his role in this. Apparently, it's a bit of a change of pace for him, and not a role he was expected to do. But I found his performance as sort of his cynical, sarcastic, British explosive expert You only needed to. You couldn't have been more British if you tried. You just needed to have a cup of tea in every scene potentially, and that would have helped.
It's the pinky up at all times.
Yes, maybe if he'd sang, "God Save a Queen" a couple times. I don't know. It would have been "God Save a King," I guess. Then, but um, special effects won an Academy Award back in the 60s. What did you think of the way the film looked?
Overall, I liked it actually. I liked because there was it definitely felt to me like the production of how it was in the barracks and in the offices at the very start compared to when they were on the boat and then when they were scaling the cliffs of Navarone or Navarone, and then the sort of like the tree filled kind of grove that they kind of run through as they're being chased by the plane and things like that, and then this the wedding scene and things like that. It had this very, each kind of section had a look, and it was designed in a way to help tell the story. Like the beginning military based sequences felt very rigid and firm, and there was an order to everything. And then the chaos of the ship just being just knocked around and Stavros out in the water and just being soaked and pulling and working on it, and just doing everything he could. And the conversation, it's instantly kind of made you feel like, yeah, they're in our they've been thrown into the deep end, and it's literally a sink or swim scenario. And then the trial of climbing and scaling, it did a good job of physically representing the journey, the metaphysical journey that they each go on. And I did appreciate that. I, like you, I think that it went too long, but the production of it and the quality of how they used their environment and how they used that to advance the story was really quite good.
You can tell. I think the location shoots ended up costing a lot. This film apparently cost about $6 million to make, which made it one of the more expensive films ever made at that point in time. But it shows the locations feel real. It really serves the film that it's been shot on location. A little bit like Mutiny in the Bounty. It was a terrible film, but it looked great, and the location shoots cost them a fortune, but they certainly paid off on the screen, and it looked amazing. The sequence of them climbing the cliffs, as you said, was shot on a lot, so it was actually them climbing along the ground, and they did some practical camera tricks and it looked really good for its time. There's some shenanigans with the print. So the original Roadshow release used Technicolor prints made in London, which gave the movie eye-popping clarity and disguised many of the imperfections of the sets and special effects. When it came to turn out mass runs of prints for general release, Columbia Pictures shipped the original negative to a bargain rate lab in New York City, where it was reconfigured for normal Eastman color printing. This meant recutting the negative to insert standard opticals to approximate the Technicolor process, smooth dissolve, etc. No preservation separations were made, and the negative wasn't properly protected. Poor quality dupe sections were soon patched in to replace damaged pieces of a negative. Eventually, 2 entire reels would have to be replaced in this way. After that, the New York lab accidentally destroyed the originals through handling errors. Columbia Pictures also discarded the film's original sound elements and stereo tracks. A collector's magnetic print was used to recover the original 4-channel stereo mix. So when you read about how they used to treat the actual film and the elements that made up the film, it's crazy that they treated their investment so poorly, but they almost felt like once it had run the cinemas for a few months, it was disposable.
Yeah.
So in a way, I guess what I'm trying to demonstrate with that is we're quite lucky to have such a good-looking print still available today after all that shenanigans.
Yeah, 100%. Wow.
Would you watch this film? Would you recommend this film to someone?
Yes, I think I would. But certainly not to everyone. I think it's very refreshing, especially for the stance it has on war. I think it's quite refreshing if you are doing it as like if you were to do a like a 1960s 1970s World War II era movie marathon session. It's a really good standout alternative piece to a lot of the stuff that goes out there. We talked about fuck, it's just gone out of my head. Great Escape and the other kinds of the other typical movies that you think of as war movies with that celebratory aren't the British amazing and aren't the Nazis terrible people. This is a nice kind of palate cleanser for something like that, but at the same time, it's a bit of a slog to get through, partly because of the length and the pacing. I would actually kind of like to see a remake of this done with the idea of, okay, let's keep it, less than 2 hours. Let's just refresh it and really, really go into it and make it a character piece. I think that there was a little bit too much spent on the spectacle of it, and it should be a real character study. Get some real good character actors in there and just let them embrace it. Almost, it makes me feel really weird about referencing this, but almost like a Suicide Squad style movie where the odds are against them, but we're in the characters, in spite of their many flaws and the scenario that they are in, are endearing, and you want to see them get through.
It's surprising you haven't seen anything like that. I mean, I know there was a sequel made in the late 70s, which I don't know anything about and I haven't seen. But yeah, you'd almost see something like this as good fodder for something like that. I mean, World War II films, they generally don't go out of style. Nazis are great villains because they're not particularly morally ambiguous. Everybody hates the Nazi, and you can do whatever the fuck to them, and you're not going to offend anybody by sticking the boots into the Nazis. So I'm with you on that one. I would struggle to recommend it to people only because of its length. It's a very slow, languid pace of a story. I think a lot of people would struggle with that today. But if you're a fan of World War II films, I guess I would. And it is an interesting from a cinematic history perspective, in the sense that it was the highest grossing film of the year, so it was a blockbuster, but it held that kind of really subversive message for the time. Fairly obviously embedded in the story. People just missed. I'm kind of glad I've seen it now. I'm like, okay, now I guess I know what all the fuss is about. But I don't know, 2.5 hours. It was a bit of a slog at times.
Yeah, it's certainly not a slog in comparison to like the previous movie of Mutiny on the Bounty or anything like that, or fucking Hamlet and the other epic ones that I've accidentally chosen for us. But it is still kind of like, okay, you could have easily trimmed 25 minutes out of this movie and it would have been the better for it.
That sequence at the end, the explosive sequence, was really well done and really tense and really exciting. And I just needed to kind of get through that stuff in the middle to get to that. Like, they got caught too many times. It's to get to.
Man, we got him again.
Just shoot them already. Just shoot them. That's what you want to do.
You've captured their stunt doubles.
Oh, Mel Brooks. What a treasure. Anyway, you have the keys.
I do, and we are going to follow David Niven, and we are going to go to a comedy, but we are not going to go to Casino Royale. We are going to go to the 1976 comedy crime mystery movie that is going to be incredibly controversial because of some of the casting and a lot of the content, but it's going to be interesting. We are going to go to Murder by Death.
Okay. I've not seen this. I think I didn't heard of this.
Yes. 5 famous literary detective characters and their sidekicks are invited to a bizarre mansion to solve an even stranger mystery. Now, this has got quite a cast for the day. It has got Peter Falk. It's got Alec Guinness. It has got Peter Sellers. It's got Ellen Brennan. And then Obviously, we've got David Niven in there. We've got Maggie Smith. We've got Nancy Walker, Estelle Winwood. We've got James Cromwell. It's pretty well stacked for a few places for us to go from interesting stuff.
Truman Capote
Mhm.
is in this film. I didn't think he was an actor.
It is. This is going to be a really, really interesting one to go to because, for one thing, Peter Sellers, very English gentleman, plays Sidney Wang. And yes, he is entirely playing an Asian guy.
Right.
Yes, so it is very, 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 very not good for modern social understandings.
It's interesting. I was reading somebody, like I said, an article about how what's his name? The guy who plays Frank Free. I can't believe I don't remember his name off the top of my head in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I suck. Anyway, but he is apparently putting his hand up to play Professor X in any.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito wants to play Professor X
Mm.
in a future X-Men film. And people are like, no. In the comments on Facebook, like, no. Has to be an actor who's in a wheelchair. Has to be a wheelchair-bound actor. Only a wheelchair. You can't have an able-bodied actor playing, a wheelchair-bound Professor X. And you're like, wow. I mean, it's all about what you are now. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously there are some things I tend to agree with, and you're like, yeah, it's a bit shit having Peter Sellers playing an Asian character. I think Mickey Rooney played an Asian character. I think in Breakfast at Tiffany's. That's probably not great. I think it was Emma Stone was playing a Japanese character, I think, about 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. There's been the new controversy that James Franco, who apparently is out of actor jail in spite of the allegations and stuff against him, he's being cast as Fidel Castro or something.
Yes, I did read that, and a few people are upset because he's not.
He's not.
I don't know about that. Not that he's not Latino, just the fact that what's been reported that James Franco did. I don't know how anyone's going to want to work with him.
Yeah, it seems weird to me.
But that's all. It's a different world these days, and you're right. You can't get the idea of Peter Sellers playing an Asian character. While on the one hand, I was probably very funny at the time. You're kind of like, oh, I'm going to feel very bad if I laugh at that.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I picked it, but to kind of highlight how society changes. And it's good that it changes because stuff like that just really isn't right. So this is going to be an interesting capsule thing. Peter Sellers kind of is a legend of Hollywood, given movies like Doctor Strangelove and things like that, and his legacy from The Goon Show, where he was particularly famous for kind of starting what Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy and others did of just playing multiple characters and things like that. He did it in a very interesting way, but it was very much the 60s and 70s where minorities and any kind of diversity that was not heteronormative was mocked. And it's going to be really interesting to see if, one, any of it is okay, and two, it'll be curious to see if a movie such as this, disregarding the very overt nature of this character in particular, if something like this could work today.
I mean, I haven't seen this yet, but I'm expecting a Knives Out style farce.
You're not too far wrong. It's a little bit of kind of sitting somewhere nicely between Knives Out and the Clue movie.
Okay, which I've not seen for a long time anyway. I might have seen it a very, very, very long time ago.
Oh, see, I'm doing my best to work us to that because I really want to go back and watch that movie because it's so good.
We need to get Tim Curry, and we're there. Should we move on? Do you want to talk about The Grey Man, considering that's something we both had a chance to watch?
So this is the newest movie by the Russo brothers, famous for finishing phases the original Avengers MCU arcs with Endgame and all of the movies they did before that. This is their first big movie starring Ryan Gosling, getting Chris Evans in, and one of our favorite actresses.
The Amas.
Yes. In a interesting, maybe, story.
It's yeah. Well, I would sort of say a franchise starter, a franchise seed that they're attempting to put in here, because I think that Netflix want this to be a bit of their Fast and Furious kind of series or something like that.
Yeah, they've already been greenlit for a sequel.
I was curious about this because I saw some very good reviews.
Mm-hmm.
The involvement of the Russos. I mean, just on my Facebook, from about 5 years ago, the original idea for and the cast for Infinity War popped up, and remember it was going to be one movie originally, and it had all those people, and you're like, "Fuck, how are we going to squeeze all those guys into it? You know, all those actors, all those characters." And when they did it, you're like, "It's fucking genius, really," because like it would have been. I think we're all expecting to fuck it up, and you know, what have the Russos done? You mean, I guess when they got into Marvel, they did the Winter Soldier, but before that, they were doing Community and stuff, right?
The first movie that I remember of theirs was
Welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah, which was just trash.
But they were doing TV sitcoms, and you know, with Dan Harmon, which is Community is a fine TV show as sitcoms go. But like then they're doing epic and fucking great Marvel movies, and Winter Soldier. People would usually put that in the top echelon of Marvel films. I mean, you know, then you're like, then you get the Endgame. You're like, wow, how did they do it? So I was going in on this on the strength of their involvement. I haven't loved a lot of Chris Evans stuff outside of Captain America, other than maybe Knives Out. And I don't think this changes my opinion. This film is very powerfully, aggressively generic.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it's one part Born Identity with the flashbang of a Fast and the Furious, throwing in the kind of I don't know the anti-hero wave that has been going through so much, because you know Ryan Gosling seems to be making a bit of a career for himself, and I love Ryan Gosling generally, but he is definitely kind of found his niche kind of character that he likes to play, which is somewhat emotionally detached, and he's kind of becoming the new Harrison Ford. It's like, okay, you know what? You are very happy doing this, and you can do that really well. And you don't want to do anything else. Okay.
I found, in addition to those sort of those franchises you talked about there, you get sprinkle in some James Bond and a healthy dose of Mission Impossible, because it was very Mission. The set pieces kind of very Mission Impossible-y. I think the action set pieces are where this film is probably at its strongest. The set piece in Prague with the tram and the shootout around the tram was pretty strong, pretty nicely done. It actually managed to get me to take my attention off my phone and Reddit to watch the film for 5-10 minutes, and then went back to it because they went back to the same boring shit they'd been doing since the beginning. The hospital fight sequence as well, I thought was pretty nicely done. Should we talk about? I should probably. We never do this. We're going to tell you about the plots just because you are.
I will do it in the style that I feel like Netflix wants us to. 6. A highly skilled assassin in the deep cover Sierra program of the CIA is the agent's best Merchant of Death. However, a mission goes bad, and now Six is on the run from the CIA, with sociopathic former agent Lloyd Hansen hot on his trail. Aided by Agent Danny Miranda and handler Donald Fitzroy, Six must be his most ruthless to avoid Hansen, who will stop at nothing to bring Six down.
This time, it's personal. That's well done. So it's just you hadn't picked it. Ryan Gosling plays Six, the agent, our hero. Chris Evans played Lloyd Hansen, our antagonist. Billy Bob Thornton phones it in as Fitzroy. And Anna de Armas, yet again, it's just an absolute joy to watch on screen as Danny Miranda. When are they going to give her own movie? Her own spy movie, please.
Have you seen the trailer for what's her she's starring as
she's gonna be Marilyn Monroe, right?
Yes, Marilyn Monroe.
I haven't. I've seen some stuff going around about some controversies about whether she's the right color blonde or something. I don't know what was the story, but
I think it is, but I'm interested. I mean, yes, she's gonna have a bit of her accent, but it looks interesting. I'm aboard. She's a very capable actress, so I'm definitely going to give it a try.
And I mean, like actors usually are well known for doing, accents, and it's directed by an Australian.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, well, sort of Australian, Kiwi, but pretend I'm a foreigner. Andrew Dominic, who has done great work in Australia, such as Chopper and Killing Them Softly. And so I would be interested to see that. Definitely, I would go and watch Anna de Armas read the phone book right now. She's in scintillating hot form. I mean, I guess she was the star of Knives Out, so I mean that's good. But props to Ryan Johnson, who really seemed to pick her out of a lot. I'd never seen her in anything before that. She's so good in this, and she's really injects some energy and life into the film that's much needed because. Story about a secret CIA agent who's disavowed, and they send people to kill him, and he's a globe-hopping secret agent who has to get the thing, to get to everything, to clear his name, and boy, haven't seen that before. It's a really, really fresh and original story. Apparently written by one of the Russos and a couple other people. I was actually thinking to myself after why the fuck would this be the film the Russos choose to do next? I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's so generic. I mean, other than the fact that I assume Netflix backed up a truck full of money to their office and said, make whatever the fuck you want, really. I mean, you want to go blow up a tram in Prague? Cool. I'm sure that's attractive, but then again, I have to imagine. I think Marvel kicked them to the curb, if I remember correctly. They weren't really keen on working with the Russos again, if I remember, because there's a bit of a falling out, I think, between Marvel and the Russos.
I don't remember that, but it could very well be. I feel like there was something that went on, but I don't know.
I have to imagine they could have written their own check, basically. They write anywhere in Hollywood, anything you want to pick up next, with the highest grossing film of all time under your belt. You go and say, I want to do Professor Horatio Huffnagel's Fantabulous Contraptions, I want to finally get around that Baron Munchausen remake I've had my eye on. But I want Terry Gilliam to direct because he always gets it right. I'm sure it'll work this time. I mean, they would have got a meeting with that. Whether they would have got it made,
Terry Gilliam's curse would have hit.
But they could have done pretty much anything they wanted. In other words, I mean, this is the one that they chose. I just found myself a little bit puzzled about that because they've done a passable job. This is a watchable movie. If you like mindless spy action movies, you'll probably dig it. And some friends of mine liked it, but it's It's just not very interesting. It's not very original. It's nothing special.
I'm just not really invested in seeing anything more. I mean, it doesn't really set up the world very, very well. It's like, okay, so there's shadow parts of the CIA, and they're doing this. So yeah, so it's basically the Bourne Identity, but just done in a more arcadey kind of way rather than the brutal realism that was Jason Bourne series. Okay, sure. What? So he goes back to work. So what are we just going to have six going up against terrorists? Is it going to be another rogue agent? What are you going to do? Because honestly, I don't see anything new.
The only outstanding part of this for me, apart from Ada Armisen, I assume she would be working alongside Six in any future Grey Man sequel, was the character Avik San, who is an assassin who is sent by Lloyd Hansen to try and kill Ryan Gosling, played by the Indian actor Dhanush. That's just his name. He's a one-name actor. Not, I would imagine, particularly well known to Western audiences. I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen any of his other work. If you're big into Bollywood or Indian cinema, I'm sure he's probably the Bollywood, the Indian George Clooney, for all I know. But he was fucking good. Like, he really nailed his fight sequences. I don't know if that's a specialty. Again, maybe that's what he's known for in Indian cinema. But I was like, I want to see more of that guy. I think he was almost a breakout star.
Yeah, and the way that he, even when he wasn't in fight sequences, the way he interacted with the other people and his kind of his own personal code of ethics and how he does his job and things, it's like, that's interesting, that's compelling. The fact that, the what he does at the end and kind of walks away and stuff like that. So like, interesting. That has given this character more depth. I like it.
I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to do that because it was felt fairly obvious. But I'm like, okay, Russo boys, you got me on that one. I'm interested in seeing more of Dhanush and his Avik San character. I don't know if there's enough there to do a spin-off, but you'd probably bring him back for a sequel because he survived.
Now, let's little bit. Sorry, I just want to talk a little bit about the Chris Evans character, the villain, before we move on to Ryan Gosling, perhaps.
Yes.
So this is Chris Evans doing something he doesn't do very often. He's being a villain, and he's being a psychopath. And what do you think of it?
He played a very Chris Evans-y kind of psychopath. I feel like he's kind of got one speed, Chris Evans. Like, he reminded me of a character he played in Knives Out a little bit, but perhaps a little bit less gay. I don't know if his character was supposed to be gay in Knives Out, but he just set the gaydar off, that's all. It made me think back now to a character he played in Scott Pilgrim, which was kind of arrogant and over the top as well. And I'm kind of like, Then we go back to Fantastic Four movies where he played, which we saw not so long ago, and where he played the, over the top arrogant Johnny Storm, if I'm not mistaken. Johnny Storm? I don't know, Chris. It worked okay. It was a bit different. It wasn't your normal mustache twirling, get it out, but it was kind of the flamboyant, over the top, cocky, arrogant frat boy kind of psychopath. And I'm like, I think I've seen that done. You've done that a few times now, Chris.
I was really bored with it. I liked the start where he still maintained a level of his own personal professionalism. But at the same time, it was a muddled character I wasn't entirely sure what he was supposed to be. Like, I think he was previously part of the Sierra Project, but he was let go because he was so psychologically broken and had no moral compass and things like that. I'm like, okay, so what is his character? It's because he seems to just be purposefully kind of making a lot of mistakes, and underperforming in every way. But he's supposed to be an actual threat for Six. I didn't feel like he was ever going to be a threat for Six. He was just like someone that was moderately okay at fighting, but we never got a chance to see him kind of be a badass or anything. He wasn't sort of like intellectually brilliant at chess and things like that. There was nothing like that. He was just an arrogant shit
who had no morals.
Yeah.
You know what I found myself thinking of, and maybe I was off base of this. Made me think of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Rupert, you and I went and saw a few years ago with Henry. Was it Henry Cavill and I forget who else it was, but
Armie Hammer.
Armie Hammer. Yeah. Speaking of people who are on the blacklist, did you see he's working now as like a timeshare salesperson in the Bahamas? Yeah. Turns out being a cannibal is a bad career move. Who'd have thunk it? But like, you remember how those guys were just sort of handsome, and handsome and fight kind of well, and that was kind of all they did.
Yeah,
I just kind of found myself thinking of Chris Evans as a little bit in that category, sort of unconvincing and just there to look good.
Yeah, it was that kind of cardboard cutout character. Yeah.
I don't know why it sort of made my head go there, or Henry Cavill's character in that Mission Impossible movie he did, where you kind of got the gig because you were Superman. It was kind of cool to see Ethan Hunt take on Superman. Ryan Gosling, I was going to talk about quickly, is that you made a good point at the start of it to say that he's kind of settled into a comfortable sort of habit of doing these uninteresting action roles. When I think back to we go back to some of the more interesting roles he did, which would be Blade Runner. Interesting, but yeah, speaking of his new Harrison Ford, he did that film with Harrison Ford. Mm-hmm. Well, one that I've always enjoyed, I think is my favorite Ryan Gosling role, and maybe it's our five, because I know you liked it as well. That was The Nice Guys. When he did with Russell Crowe, he was so different in that role and so good at the comedy.
Yes. It was entirely different. And then the next time that I saw him in comedy was that one he did with Steve Carell, and he wasn't actually funny. He was just somewhat of an emotionally divorced pretty man who had a lot of money but didn't have all of his ducks in a row and made foolish romantic relationship decisions.
Is that The Big Short?
No. It was... I'll look into it. Hang on.
Because I don't think he's done a comp. Is it not La La Land or anything? No.
It was Big Short. No. Crazy Stupid Love.
Oh, right, yeah.
What he did after Drive, which was that was his breakout performance for mainstream, I think. And what is he in that? He's reserved, emotionally constrained character. And that's kind of what he's done for the rest of it, with the exception of The Big Short, The Nice Guys, and that's it. His characters kind of stayed the same.
Look, I liked him in First Man as well a few years ago. I'm fascinated to see him in the Barbie film. Fascinated to see this film. Like, I've got... Yeah, sounds like a terrible idea for a film. But then again, I thought Lego Movie was a terrible idea for a film.
Mm-hmm. And
that worked out really quite well. And it's directed by, what's her face? He did Lady Bird, Greta Gerwig, who I like a lot. Yeah. Of course, Margot Robbie, an exceptional actor who generally doesn't make bad choices. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm curious. I'm very curious to see Ryan Gosling. I'm curious about this. I want to say, it's going to be one or two things. Is it the next Lego Movie, or is it the next Battleship?
Yeah, but it's a really interesting cast on that, because it's also got one of the standout actresses from a TV show on Netflix that I really liked, which was Sex Education, starring Emma Mackey, or Mackey. And she kept on having lots of people go, "Oh my God, are you Margot Robbie?" Because she does look a lot like her. she's in the Barbie movie.
And she was one of the standouts in Death on the Nile,
Yeah.
which is a bad movie, but she was good in it.
Yeah. So it's really good.
Will Ferrell, Kate McKinnon, Simu Liu, who is Shang-Chi, America Ferrera.
I'm really confused by this movie. It's written by Noah Baumbach, who did Squid and the Whale, Marriage Story. What the hell is this movie going to be?
It's wacky. Anyway, we're off topic. This is not, but I'm fascinated to see it. I just can't wait to see it. I have no idea what this is going to be, but I think it's not going to be what we think it is.
No, it's going to be the weirdest fucking movie, and I'm so.
I am down for it. I am down to see what this is. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's kind of a consensual when it comes to the Grey Man. I don't really see interested in seeing a whole lot more about Universe, but I think we will be.
Yeah. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about that is a damning indictment on, and this is a warning. This is my first warning to Hollywood. So I've noticed it getting more and more prevalent. Stop using drones for everything. They use
wow, they were everywhere, weren't they?
Everywhere. Oh my God. Occasionally, yes, it's great. But
I haven't seen the last Michael Bay film, but I've heard a lot of people say that he's using them a lot now in his work as well. But wow, it was a good call. They were prominent in this film. They were everywhere.
Yep, I get it. You can get your drone in and really pull out and do everything. Yes, absolutely. Use those tools, but don't over fucking use them.
It's like a lens flare, man. You got to use it sparingly.
Yes. Oh fuck! If J.J. Abrams uses lens flare with a drone, I'm just gonna.
Let's not give him any ideas because I've had to tell Michelle. Unfortunately, there will not be a Trek retrospective this week. I've been telling her to look forward to the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. So yeah.
Now,
but we do have a commercial break because it's just about that time.
It is that time.
Yeah, I know people have missed them, but the Trek Perspective will be back next week, I promise you.
We are building the Trek Perspective Universal story, and eventually I'm sure that it will end up, you'll be able to come and experience it live at the Astor.
Yes, indeed. So I've got a very special one for you between us. I'm going to start that again. Doing this with my backup computer, it's a little bit different than normal.
We're a professional podcasting company.
So you let me know when we're ready, and I will press play on this week's. We have exercise videos by John McSweeney, our sponsor.
Tiger Moon.
Savage beauty. Look at that powerful body. Strength, grace, magnificent form. How does the tiger manage to keep himself at the peak of physical fitness for his entire life? He doesn't lift weights, work machines, perform calisthenics or aerobics, and he doesn't jog, yet he can tear the head off a man. His power comes from his own exercise system, far different from man's, and also far superior. It is the ultimate exercise system, which I call Tiger Moves. Ironically, when man sets about to improve his health and physical fitness through exercise, he devises systems which lack the simple wisdom of the tiger. Low-impact aerobics has far less injuries than high-impact, as does belly dancing, with its smooth and completely natural moves. Tiger Moves, the best and most natural exercise system man can use. I'm John McSweeney, and I'm going to cover 7 of these basic tiger moves. Inhale back with tension. Exhale forward. Try to reach for the stars. Reach as high as you can. With tension, great tension, Come forward with great tension. Feel the tension in the triceps muscles. Think into those thigh muscles, the quadriceps, the hamstrings. The next tiger move is the stomach roll. This exercise now from the side, I push down and roll up. Flex, force it down. Come up. You've just learned in this tape 3 critical areas of life and self-defense. I'll leave you with one thought. It pertains to nations, it pertains to the individual. First a warrior, or all else is folly.
I'm stopping that right there.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to need a vote, I think, on what sponsor so far has been the best/worst.
I think the Finnish door opening one was my favorite.
I kind of like the dance routine of no, stay away.
Spending my life. Yes, they were good. But you know, I saw the tiger moves, and I thought our audience needed to know they existed. So there they are. Like a tiger.
Now, before we get too far away from Chris Evans, do you mind if I talk a little bit about Lightyear?
What's right? Lightyear, go for it.
So, Lightyear is the new Disney Pixar movie that has come out, and it is now on Disney Plus. And it had a bit of controversy before it came out because it had been edited by executives to remove a gay kiss, and it was petitioned and became a bit of a social media move to get the kiss reinstated, which it then was, and the movie came out.
I think there's also some fuss about the fact that Tim Allen's not voicing Buzz Lightyear.
There was a bit about that, yeah. But so Lightyear is a movie. It is the movie that the action figure of Buzz Lightyear is based off of in the Toy Story universe. So it's the movie about a character of a character in a movie,
Right.
I think, and it is entirely pointless. Not gonna play with anyone right here. It is a waste, and it is a waste of an interesting concept. Because what happens in this? I'm just going to bring up the official synopsis. And it's after spending years attempting to return home, marooned space ranger Buzz Lightyear encounters an army of ruthless robots commanded by Zurg, who is attempting to steal his fuel source. That absolutely disregards the most interesting part of this whole movie, which is the spending years trying to get home. Because they are part of Space Command, they're in a semi-colonization ship that is colloquially referred to as the Turnip because it looks like a turnip, and because of Buzz not knowing or consistently feeling like he doesn't need help and he works better alone and all of that stuff, and he fucks up, and the ship, whilst trying to get back into space, gets damaged, and they crash, and they're marooned on this planet. And so they awaken all of the scientific bods that are in the Turnip, and they start building a base over the course of a couple of years, whilst also trying to develop a synthetic crystal that they use to get to light speed, which would then allow them to get home. The problem with it is every time Buzz goes up to try to test the resiliency of the fuel, the closer he gets to light speed, time passes normally for him, but it speeds up on the planet. So when he comes back the first time, 4 years has gone past. and everyone's aged, and it's really actually quite compelling. And particularly the story or the ideology of Buzz and the mission log or mission purpose of Space Rangers is always complete the mission. He chooses to make the sacrifice of being devoid from the rest of the people by being thrown up into space for him, like every couple of days. But it stretches out longer and longer and longer over years and years and years, and he sees his friends age and start having relationships and kids, and the relationship is where the gay kiss comes in and things like that. Not with Buzz, but Buzz's friend. And it's actually really quite well done in a similar nod of quality to the opening of Up, where we see the young Carl as he is a child wanting to be an adventurer, and he meets the girl and they age up and they become romantic, and it tells that lovely story with barely any words of this couple aging and separating and dealing with that love and loss. So it was a nice nod, and it got me a little teary the way that it was done. Then he has the successful trip, and he comes back, and suddenly there's robots coming to capture him, and blah 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 blah, and generic spacefaring action movie ensues. And it's boring. The emotional investment is entirely dried up. The quality of the animation is quite stunning. The voice acting, it's good. Nothing really stand out. Nothing really bad. And then they do. I guess I'm going to spoil it. The identity of Zurg is revealed, and anyone who's watched Toy Story 2, where they have that typical "I am your father" moment from Toy Zurg to Toy Buzz, I'm like, they don't do that. They do the other obvious one. And it's like, okay, wow, you really ran out of ideas. And especially, this is supposed to be a movie that in the Toy Story world was so compelling and gripping and cool that they made action figures for it. And it's clearly supposed to be a big success, especially with the amount of Buzz Lightyear toys that we see in Toy Story that come in. It's really not. It's really not.
It sounds like it was a disappointment.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't excited for it. I felt like I didn't need a Buzz Lightyear origin story or anything like that. And
I mean, because the director here, he's basically specializes in crap knockoffs. Angus MacLean. He made Finding Dory, which is a crap sequel to Finding Nemo. He made a crap 5-minute spin-off of Wall-E, two Toy Story shorts, and now this.
Yeah.
He's the guy, we talked about this before, how Disney seemed to have pinched the A-Team and left Pixar with the dregs.
Yes.
Is this a Pixar? This is a Pixar. I assume this is a Pixar release.
Pixar, yes. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it's just less than this. This is just further evidence that Pixar have been brutalized for their teams. And the quality of the writers and the pressure of delivering a Pixar movie every year has 100% caught up to them. They are not anywhere near as flagship and industry leading than they used to be. It is tragic. They've got, this movie has got Chris Evans' voice in it. It's got Peter Sohn, who I recognize the face of, but I don't know how or why. He's primarily a voice actor by the looks of it. He's one of the resident voice actors of Pixar. He's got Taika Waititi in it, but he's kind of being a typical Taika Waititi voice character that he seems to do. You got James Brolin doing the voice of Zurg, and it's like, okay, sure, yep, that's definitely James Brolin's voice.
Bill Hader in there as well.
Yeah, in Featheringham Stan, and that's Bill Hader's better than the role that he was given, and it doesn't last long, and it's like, okay, sure, whatever. it's just a waste. This is something that shouldn't have gone to cinema. This is prime Disney Plus material.
It's a wave of this, right? We had a few years ago. We had the Solo film, the film no one asked for, and it was crap. Well, I never apologists out there for it. You're all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We had recently Obi-Wan, which was crap. And again, there are apologists out there for it. Mm-hmm. Some Star Wars fans will take whatever they're given. Mm-hmm. I didn't need a Solo film. I didn't need an Obi-Wan film. I didn't need a Boba Fett TV series. Mm-hmm. But as we know, it's just Disney's MO these days, right? They are going to mine their IP, their existing but successful IP, for every possible cent they can get out of it. And it has no bearing whether it's any good or not. They don't care because people... Well, this is why I get grumpy with Star Wars fans who go, oh, no, I felt I cried during the end of Obi-Wan. You're like, no, it's garbage, and we need to call it garbage because otherwise they're going to keep serving as garbage. Mm-hmm. And same here with this. Like, we're going to keep selling people garbage under the brand of Toy Story. I thought Toy Story 4 was bad. Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 were masterpieces. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing Toy Story 4, and I'm like, this isn't good. It's not awful. It's just not good.
There is nothing wrong with leaving something alone.
Remember those crap Back to the Future films that then they just like, why didn't they have a spin-off? About Doc Brown's son and what he's been up to? That would have been fun, wouldn't it?
No, you're missing the way to sell this. If you're going to do a spin-off of Back to the Future, it's Adventures of Einstein
or Doc Brown, the Doc Brown Chronicles. How did Doc Brown get to be Doc Brown? Mm-hmm. It could be like Porky's meets Back to the Future. Doc Brown for college years. Needles, the Needles movie. How did we not get the Needles movie? Like, Jesus, there's so much content they could mine there.
Stop it. You're a horrible person.
What about the animated film about the DeLorean as a character?
They could do the sort of like 6 episode mini series. What in time? There's the variation of parallel universes that happen because of accidentally stealing the time machine and stuff. I mean,
what if I hadn't fired Eric Stoltz?
My God!
In fact, I've got it. We just need to do a 6-part limited series with Doc Brown as a sort of Jason Bourne character taking on the Libyan terrorists.
We've got to stop.
Someone's out there pitching this, and when Bob Gale's dead and his kids own the property, that's what's going to happen. Someone's going to come in and do this.
Stop it! No. Why are you hurting me?
This is a horrible thing for entertainment, and I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it.
It's a bad habit that Hollywood repeatedly likes doing. And tragically, nostalgia sells, which means that nostalgia usually ends up being an alternative word you can use instead of shit.
I am out of it now. I think I didn't even finish season 2 of Picard. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely no interest. I've not seen the trailers for season 3. I'm not interested in season 3. And if you can't get me nostalgic about Jean-Luc Picard, you've done something very wrong to get us to that point.
Oh yeah.
And I just feel incredibly cynical about everything that Disney's making right now. Mm-hmm.
I have no interest in seeing Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't care about any of them. The fact that there are already memes saying I'm excited for She-Hulk because Daredevil's in it is like that's not really a good reason to be excited for She-Hulk.
I haven't watched any of Ms. Marvel. I don't have having just moved house, in fairness, I haven't had a great deal of spare time. But
All I hear is excuses.
well, can I give you another excuse? So I'm going to give people a taster.
Ooh.
For next week, we are going to talk in the Trek perspective about Star Trek Generations.
Mm-hmm.
As usual, I, being a benevolent, dictator of a bet commissioner, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
I allow a palate cleanser to happen after. Now, here's the thing. Michelle kind of liked Generations. So there's a teaser for you.
Okay.
But we, as a palate cleanser, decided to watch a favorite film of her childhood, and it wasn't the pirate movie. We're going to leave that one for George. She is a big fan of Madonna, so we went back to 1987 to see Madonna's second feature role. Who's that? Well, basically her second, star vehicle. Who's That Girl? So have you ever seen Who's That Girl?
I think I have. My stomach clenched when you said the name.
So the life of an uptight tax lawyer turns chaotic when he's asked to escort a young woman newly released from prison who persuades him to help her prove her innocence. Funnily enough, it stars Madonna. Madonna is that young woman who plays Nikki Finn. The uptight tax lawyer is Loudon Trott, played by Griffin Dunn. Griffin Dunn, if you look at his face, you'll be like, I've seen him in things. I instantly recognized him because a few months ago I watched a show called I Love Dick that starred the actor who played Agatha in One Division, Catherine Hahn, and it had Kevin Bacon in it. And Griffin Dunn's in that, but he's significantly older. I'm like, wow, that's the same dude. He was a very handsome young fellow. Other famous names here include Sir John Mills in a small role. John McMartin is not a name many people will know, but plenty of people will know his face as being a well-known TV actor, I think. And that's probably the extent of it. This is not a very good film. You'll be very shocked and appalled to hear. It has a 4.8 on IMDb, a 27 Metascore.
That's pretty high for a Madonna movie.
I feel like Desperately Seeking Susan, which I believe was her initial starring role, was a little bit better received than this one. This film, I feel like, is purely designed to be a vehicle to get her to make money and sell her albums, because I think the film was originally going to be called The Slammer or something, until she wrote a song for her new album called Who's That Girl, and they decided to retitle the film as Who's That Girl to basically, benefit from her sell more records, essentially.
Yeah.
That's about as simple as it gets. But the film reeks like that. It feels like it's been written on a weekend. So Desperately Seeking Susan has a 6.1 and a 71 Metascore. So a significantly better received film.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon, this film. Like Madonna plays almost a self-parody of herself. It's almost like she plays she's got this high squeaky voice, but she talks really fast. Almost like if I don't know if they ever made a live action Betty Boop film, but if they did, I think she might look and sound a little bit like that. And the outfits she wears are kind of comical, very 80s. Loudon Trott, played by Griffin Dunn, is marrying a society, a woman from, a society woman whose dad is very rich. His dad, played by John McMartin, as Simon Worthington, who has some sort of sketchy dealings with what got put Nikki Finn in jail. So the insinuation is that they're trying to kill her and that they need to make sure she gets on this particular bus to ensure it happens, or at the very least, they want her out of town. And so he enlists his to-be son-in-law to drive Nikki Finn to the bus station and make sure she gets on this bus. But from the moment he meets her to pick her up from prison, she basically takes over his life through being a sheer force of nature. And she trashes his Rolls Royce and destroys his, almost derails and destroys his wedding and, gets him arrested and almost killed on multiple occasions, all in an effort to try and prove that she was framed because they found her with a body in the back of her car or something. And she gets out after 6 years. It's quite an effort. I found this film really hard going. Like, I think if you have fond nostalgic memories of it, it would be, and in fairness to Michelle, she watched this as a young kid. I could see how you definitely, as a kid, I think this film would have really lit my world on fire in the 80s. But seeing it for the first time as an adult in 2022, you're like, oh, it's hard going. It just doesn't make, it's a really weird tone. It's kind of farcical and ridiculous and silly. Silly is the word. So at one point, Nikki needs to think she's got a key that her boyfriend left her before going to prison. And she knows it opens a security box, but she doesn't know which bank and she doesn't know which box. So she tracks down this guy, a pimp, who knows the bank and the box number for reasons. And so there's a fight sequence in a limo where she gets the box number by threatening the frame of a building, which she then does, and gets the box number in the bank. But the pimp and his bodyguard, who are in a limo when it falls out of the parking garage into the bay, into New York Harbor, survive. And so does the limo, apparently, because they're seen driving around with seaweed on it. And they keep chasing her. So that's kind of ridiculous. But what's even more ridiculous is in an effort to try and, I don't know, track down Finn or coax her into a situation, Nikki, where she'll, be able to like get their revenge on her. They end up kidnapping all of the bridesmaids who are supposed to be part of Loudon's wedding. They take his bride to be hostage and eventually handing her over, swapping hostages. But they end up taking hostage all of the bridesmaids, who are contained by a very loose rope. They're all roped together as a group of about 6 or 7 women with a very, very loose rope tied around their waist as a group of 7. And so they end up jumping around following these people. And, it's just kind of ridiculous. And you're like, I don't understand what's supposed to be happening here. Like the film, I don't know. It's a really weird
fun, Travis.
I guess so. It just has this weird tone. Like it's obviously not meant to be taken seriously. But where some films are complete farce. If you look at something like The Naked Gun or Hot Shot Part 2 or something like that we mentioned earlier, they are a parody. So they're ridiculous. It doesn't have to make sense that the plane in airplane or flying high is a jet. But every time they have a propeller noises outside, or I am serious. Stop calling me Shirley.
Wrong week to stop sniffing glue.
It doesn't need to make sense because it's obviously meant to be completely over the top ridiculous. This film didn't quite succeed in telling me. The film could communicate to you how its story is going to behave, and it halfway through it starts behaving in a completely silly and ridiculous way, which just kind of threw me because I'm like, okay, I was kind of treating this like a semi-serious story, like a comedy, but with a serious side to it. But like genuinely, Nikki was supposed to be under threat of being hunted down by all these people who see her as a threat. But no, it turns ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous in the end.
The way you've described it, it sounds a little bit more like strangely a more absurd. What was it? Vibes.
Yeah, more ridiculous. Like Vibes is exactly kind of what I went expecting. It was a film about psychics who were hunting down something in South America, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But the chemistry between Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper kind of worked, and its tone was, yes, it's silly, yes, it's funny, but at the same time, the threats are real. Where these characters could be killed by these bad guys. Whereas this one is kind of just very silly, and you're like, okay, the bridesmaids are being hauled around by this pimp in a seaweed-laden limo that fell into New York Harbor, and they're held together by one single piece of rope that any single one of them could take off in a second, and it's it didn't. Its tone was funny enough for me, and the interesting thing about it for me was the Madonna's character, Nikki Finn. A lot of times in this film, I found myself thinking, I wonder if Margot Robbie's seen this film a few times, because I felt like some fairly kind of really reminding me of her Harley Quinn character from Suicide Squad on a number of occasions.
Okay.
The way she spoke, the way she acted, a number of scenes kind of directly reminded me of scenes from at least the first of the Suicide Squad films with Margot in it. And it was funny because I was watching a series on YouTube recently about the Batman films, and they were talking about the third Schumacher Batman film that was originally supposed to happen or proposed to happen, was planned to have a Harley Quinn character in it. And at least, scuttlebutt at the time was that Madonna was in line or has been talked about in that role as Harley Quinn. So it's got a nice bit of synergy there. That if in the end that Margot ended up actually using a Madonna role as an influence on her Harley Quinn character, I can't guarantee. I can't say any knowledge she's an influence. It was just something that occurred to me while I was watching it.
Interesting. I'm just having a look at Margot Robbie's trivia to see if anything comes up.
But I would say if you like Madonna films, maybe you might enjoy this if you have a very strong nostalgic memory of it.
What was Michelle's thoughts coming back to it?
I think she still enjoyed it. I think it's a nostalgia trip. And you think about the films, were there a series of films you enjoyed as a young person? You sort of look back and go, oh, that wasn't particularly good, but I loved it at the time.
Yeah, Three Ninjas.
There you go. I know I had films from the 80s that I like, and I'm like, oh, it's actually not a good film, but I just enjoyed it at the time. And I sometimes you go back and they don't hold up, but sometimes there's that pure wave of nostalgia where the fact that I knew every single line in Wayne's World, line for line, like, watch that religiously. And Wayne's World's probably not that bad of a film, but I think she enjoyed going back and seeing it again. I think fashion in particular, I think, is an appeal. So if you like 80s fashion, if you like Madonna, if you like her music, you might find something there. If you're looking for a coherent story and tone, look elsewhere.
Now, do you mind if I talk about my next new release?
By all means.
Prey.
This is the new Predator film, right?
Yes, new Predator movie, and I'm going to blow your mind right now, Travis, because this movie has got a runtime of 1 hour, 39 minutes.
Wow, do they still do those?
Yeah, I know, it's shocking, right? And you know what? It does a fucking good job.
Is this how connected is this to the previous? Is it just set in the same universe? Is it
this is set 300 years ago from our time. It is follows the Comanche Nation, in particular Naru, who is our protagonist. She is a young Comanche wannabe warrior. She is very capable at many of the things required of her for her tribe on the day-to-day basis. She is particularly skilled at medicine, but from very beginning, she wears the symbolic face paint, and we see her practicing with a throwable axe and things like that. She is determined to be a fighter, but she's not ready, and this is a sticking point for her. And she, when things start going awry in the local area, she feels this drive and this desire to go out and prove her warrior status. And her brother, Tabe, incidentally. This is one of the first movies to be majorly released with a, I believe it was a Navajo dubbing for the dialogue, and they do speak. I believe it's accurate language for the time throughout a lot of it, which is subtitled. But largely the version that I watched on Disney Plus was primarily English speaking. But we've got Amber Midthunder, who plays Naru, and then Dakota Beavers plays Tabe, who are the brother and sister team. And it seems like, I haven't looked into it properly, but it does seem like they are legitimately Native American cast for this, which is very good. This is directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who did 10 Cloverfield Lane.
And I was just having a look at his filmography. He hasn't done a feature since then.
No.
And that was a really good film. Like, we all thought, what the fuck is this? How do you make a sequel to Cloverfield? And they did it, and it was good.
Yeah.
So he's done a very good episode of Black Mirror and an episode of The Boys since, but kind of shocking with it. As actually someone who showed such talent hasn't had a lot to do since then.
Yeah, but this actually really does well, because not only do we get a lot of nods to Schwarzenegger's Predator movie in characters very organically, because it's a well-written script, actually saying lines from the Predator movie, but doing it in a way. And if you know the movies, you kind of go, that's cool. But in the context of the scene, it still actually flows and makes sense. So they have that nostalgic touchstone really, really well done. But the main story is not entirely about Naru versus the Predator, which is the ultimate climax of the film, but it is Naru's journey from naive, cocky in a certain way, idealistic child who wants the greatness and the grandeur and the allure of being one of the warriors of the tribe, to getting her ass fucking handed to her on numerous occasions, and very, very clearly being told that she's not ready, and shown that she's not ready, and her realizing that she's not ready, and then being put in a position where it's fight or flight, do or die, and coming out ready. And it does that story so well that it doesn't actually leave too much time for the Predator, which is the way it should be. The Predator should be in the same way that Chris Nolan used the Joker in The Dark Knight. He described it like a shark, where you occasionally just see the fin before an attack. The Predator, for a huge portion of this movie, is invisible, using the cloaking, so you don't really see it. And then eventually, as it stays in the area hunting smaller animals, bigger animals, and then integrating or encountering the human element, primarily this Comanche tribe and some French people that have landed on the shores. It slowly but surely gets that technology ripped away from it, and you suddenly see it, and it is a cool looking Predator, and it's got this sort of like skull kind of thing on it. It's not the typical mask that we instantly think of from all the other Predator movies. There are other little nods to it, like in the final third of the movie, she gets given a musket, a gun, which is actually what appears in the Predator gives Danny Glover's character at the end of the Predator sequel. And it's like there's very nice little nods like that to tie it into the mythos of Predator. But again, it's all done so well to serve the story of telling about Naru. But on top of that, the fight sequence with the fucking Predator is fucking cool. And it doesn't waste its time. In fact, I would argue maybe a little bit rushed, but still, it doesn't feel overly rushed, and there is a sense of agency and urgency to the way that the story is told, and particularly that sense of urgency and the pace of it. It helps you actually get into the mindset of Naru, where it feels a bit slow to start with, and it's kind of frustrating because we're seeing the occasional corpse of an animal and signs of the predator's tracks and things like that. And it's like, come on, let me see the predator. And then the first time we experience the predator in the movie, it's like, oh, you fucking bastards, it's invisible. It's really annoying. And it gets you into the mindset of Naru, who is impatient to be a warrior, but she's not ready. And by the time that she is ready, we're ready to experience the predator. They finally do the reveal, and it's great. It just, everything about it serves the story and serves to tell a interesting story about the protagonist rather than the kind of glamour, I suppose, that has been draped around the predator's neck in every sequel that has ever been after the Schwarzenegger one, and the bombastic nature of it. That's not here. The Predator has obviously got cool advanced tech. The fact that it's cloaking and sort of like guided and returning arrow kind of things and stuff like that. And it's got like the iconic 3 red dots that come in and that sort of stuff. But this is kind of a not primitive predator, but a less evolved, less technologically advanced predator than we've ever seen, and it's still a fucking threat, and it's cool. I recommend this movie.
And where are you seeing it in Australia?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus in Australia. This is a Hulu production.
It's their Stars brand.
Right. It's nice to see them get it right because
yes,
I think I was one of the 5 people in the world who liked Predators, the Adrian Brody film. But God, that one, the show, when Shane Black went to it a few years ago, oh, that stunk.
Yeah, that was not a good movie.
That was really disappointing from Shane Black. Like,
yeah,
we had such you and I remember it was like we had such high hopes. Oh, Shane Black's back on the, being one of the original writers, and no, just got it wrong.
Did not work out well for him. So this is a nice 98-minute movie. 99-minute movie. Sorry, my apologies.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm trash. It is a compelling story highlighting a entirely different culture than we normally see. And usually, if any Native Americans appear in a lot of movies, it's usually in somewhat stereotypical or dicey roles of, oh, yes, this, and questionable things like Johnny Depp being Tonto and things like that. This is actually just very much showing their slice of life style of, they go out, they go hunting, they do this, they do that. That's what they do to survive. This is an extreme thing that happens, but at the same time, everything that happens in the tribe, it's just what they do. It's just their life. It's a Thursday. It was great. It just represented it really well. I don't really know anything about the society, but it seemed to be respectful, which is good.
That's a plus. Yes. This is, I guess, the upside of what we talked about earlier. Like the idea that you work overtime to cast culturally appropriate people in roles. I'm assuming from what you're saying, if the performances were enjoyable, or you felt they were quality performances.
Definitely Amber Mid-Thunder as Naru. She was really good. Her brother was a little bit shaky, but got better towards the end. So I don't quite know what was going on there. The shakiness in the performance didn't feel like it was part of the character, but by the end, he seemed to really understand the character much better and came across well. Stormy Kip played Wasap, who is something of an antagonist. He was pretty good, actually, kind of scary in his own right, but also tread a really nice line of us understanding his point of view on why everything that Naru was doing was so frustrating because it was so different. And the Predator, played by Dane DeLigero, he was good, and it looked like it was a lot of prosthetics rather than, they certainly didn't seem to use any CGI. If they did, it was on the mandibles, those classic mandibles. But he was threatening. He was big. He was muscly, and he just looked like someone that could just pick up a fucking bear and things like that. So it all fit. It was everything about the story, everything about the characters. They felt organic and lived in and realistic within that world. Very well done. Very smart.
Impressive. I mean, that's what I say. Look, at the very least, so maybe this leads to bigger things for some of those guys. The star, if nothing else, you sort of said there, who really maybe for standout performance here, that gives her a chance to get other roles, and the other guy get a chance for their next role. And before you know it, maybe we have a Native American actor who is,
flying high,
like being, at the Oscars or headlining major productions there.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So so while it sounds like, I guess maybe sound a little cynical later in the film, I do understand earlier in the show. I do understand why they're doing it, and it is a nice chance for these people to get the people who wouldn't normally get a look in.
Absolutely.
Yes. Normally, 10 years ago, you would have gone out and cast white actors or slightly, maybe even European actor in a role, as you sort of said, Johnny Depp playing Tonto, or even Peter Sellers playing, an Asian character or whatever.
Yeah, it would have been sort of like, oh, you're a famous white guy. Can you tan up and wear traditional Native American gear?
Did David Day-Lewis play in the last Mohican? And isn't he English?
Yeah. Yeah, that one doesn't sit well with me.
He was lauded for that role, as I recall correctly. You live in different times. We're getting long, so, and I know you want to talk about Sandman, I think, right?
Well, I can always hold that because I've only watched episode 1, so I can hold on to that.
Well, I'll quickly talk about a couple of things here. I'll try and make them nitro. A couple of weeks ago, before I got the unspecified virus of unknown origin, I managed to finally get around to one of the top films in my pile of shame, and that film is The Prestige.
Christopher Nolan.
So I don't know if you remember, there were 2 films about magicians came out about the same time. It was The Prestige and The Illusionist.
Yeah,
and a little bit like that time when you went and saw, there was like Bloodborne and there was Overwatch, and you went, Bloodborne's a game for me. And then I was like that with this. I went with The Illusionist, and no one remembers that film, but everyone remembers The Prestige. What a wonderful, wonderful film this is. Those who haven't seen it, from 2006, after a tragic accident, 2 stage magicians in 1890s London engage in battle to create the ultimate illusion while sacrificing everything they have to outwit each other. As you noted, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Scarlett Johansson, Michael Caine, Piper Perabo, Rebecca Hall, David Bowie, Andy Serkis, and Daniel Davis. He, of course, the butler from The Nanny. And this does, what a wonderful film this is. It's I just can't do it justice in a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to say, if like me, you haven't seen this film, go and see it. Get it, hire it, rent it, steal it, borrow it. This is probably one of his best films, I think. I don't know. You've seen it, I imagine.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. This was very much at a point where he was, before he became incredibly self-indulgent.
Well, in fairness, it's probably only the last couple of films he's really sort of gone into that space. Oh, well, actually, Dark Knight Rising was pretty self-indulgent too. People don't need to understand what Tom Hardy says. Yeah. It's I think the best role outside of Wolverine I've ever seen Hugh Jackman play. Like I am quite critical of that in the sense that I don't think Hugh Jackman's done many good non-Wolverine films.
Are
And
you forgetting Caden Leopold, sir?
I am including Kate Leopold in that. I not for 1 second did I believe he was a plucky advertising executive. Um,
Damn it, I was going to say that before.
but, you know, Logan, of course, probably the best thing he's ever done. He's made that role his own, but I don't know if he's done a whole lot else outside of that. A bit like Chris Hemsworth. I don't think he's really done terribly many things outside of Thor that are very good. So he gets an incredible performance out of him. Christian Bale, well, obviously he's
great.
He's great, and he's one of Nolan's guys. Half the fucking cast of the Batman films are in here, one shape or form. Michael Caine, again, another one of his regulars who he loves working with. David Bowie does a pretty decent job as Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. A bit like I was talking to Michelle on the weekend about how like Madonna tried to be an actor. I'm like, David Bowie tried as well, and I'm not sure he ever was a particularly good actor. He's quite good in this. And just the central themes about the revenge and regret and the twist at the end, which I did see coming a fair way out. I had that attack of you in my head going, well, I think I know what happens at the end. It was a much better film than the other magician film that I went and saw, the Ed Norton illusionist film, which I've now happily forgotten. But
I still like that movie.
I should go back and check that out now, actually, considering I'm being a little bit harsh on it because I am comparing it to a truly great film. It might just be an okay film.
It's definitely more of a romance or a tragic romance story compared to everything else. Yeah.
I said I was going to go Nitro. I'm going to go Nitro. So I can't really do it justice in a couple of minutes. I'm going to say, wow, what a treat to have a film sitting there on your pile of shame from 16 years ago of that quality.
16 years ago?
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, we're getting old. I went to a shopping centre today in the western suburbs of Melbourne and realised I think one of the last times I was there was to see The Dark Knight 14 years ago.
No.
I want to quickly talk about a new series that's getting quite a bit of a push on Stan here in Australia. I have no Peacock, I think, in the US, and it's called The Resort. Exploring love and the weird things we do in the name of it, encased in an elaborate true crime conspiracy. Our main stars are Kristen Milioti and William Jackson Harper. Christine Milioti, most people will probably remember from Black Mirror, the USS Callister.
She was also in Palm Springs, right?
Yes, and this is from the same people behind Palm Springs. The William Jackson Harper, most people will remember from his role in The Good Place when he played Chitty. He was also in Midsummer, if anybody saw that, which is
okay.
You haven't, you really should. It's very good. This is created by Andy Ciara, who was the writer of Palm Springs. Unfortunately, I see the first 2 episodes of this, so I'm going to say what I'm going to say based on 2 episodes. And I think 2 episodes of a show, it's probably a decent place to start to make up your mind about what you're going to say about something. And they're fairly sizable episodes, 36 minutes or thereabouts. This is a pass. This is a big no for me. Kristen plays a character named Emma. William plays a character called Noah. They are a couple. They are a couple whose marriage is in trouble. They are on a retreat to a resort to, I guess, just to get a holiday. But you can sort of tell the marriage is in trouble, and they're kind of hoping to find some spark on the trip. They go to this beach on the holiday, and everybody starts getting really old really fast. And all of a sudden, they're like, hey, there's some aging properties on this beach. No, that was a different film about people going into a resort. Sorry. their anniversary trip to Mexico takes a turn when Emma finds an old phone in the jungle. Turns out, well, that's a good point, Richard. Wanda took free to get to the proper test, I guess. But I really, really enjoyed the first 3 or 4 episodes of that show.
Yes.
Like we were the two people who were like, "What's everybody talking about?" Saying this is boring. This is fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the first 5 or 6 episodes of that show. And then it kind of got a bit, and then Skybeam, and it kind of went, oh, okay. But I guess the first episode it was like the first episode was like, okay, you had my interest, now you have my attention. In one particular night, Emma goes off on her own after Noah falls asleep early. Sorry, tell a lie. So she finds a phone in the jungle, an old flip phone, an old Motorola Razr. And it sparks her interest. She goes and buys a battery and a SIM card for it in the local town, gets it working. How a fucking Motorola Razr, if it's been in the jungle for the last 10, 15 years, still works? I've got no idea if it did. And it turns
better back then.
And it turns out it belonged to a young guy who disappeared from the resort maybe 10, 15 years earlier, only to find that the actual resort that he was staying in was destroyed by a hurricane the day after. So his disappearance is never been resolved. Another girl disappears the day after he disappears, who was apparently unconnected to him. And again, because of a hurricane, her disappearance has never been resolved. And you're like, okay, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. And then episode 2 just takes the ball and goes, what's a ball? And just drives it around. It was like, had this super weird comedic tone. And they start bringing these really boring tropes about, oh no, they're being followed by, these people who work for this rich Mexican family, and the tone again, a little bit like, who's that girl? Like, what is this show trying to be? Are you trying to be funny because you're not succeeding? Are you trying to be mysterious and spooky because you're not succeeding? There's supposed to be a sense of menace here because you're not succeeding. It just. I don't know. I went with Richie. Maybe I was a little bit too premature, but after 2 episodes of this, I was like, "That's a no from me, thanks." A really weird, strange tone. It has a 7.1 from 115 ratings. Episode 1.
That's not strong.
Episode 2 has a 7.7 from 85 ratings. So it's not a lot of people giving it it's got a 7.1 overall from 900 ratings. Maybe other people, maybe it gets better, but like after 2 episodes, it was just starting to fucking annoy me. How these 2 drunk Americans are running around trying to hide from guys with guns in a marketplace, and it was like, no, I'm out.
Well, it looks like only the first 4 episodes have been released at this point.
Yeah, I guess, but maybe 900 ratings aren't very many for a show on IMDb. If I'm wrong, people, get in touch with us. Let us know. Maybe I'll go back and try it again. But 2 episodes were enough for me to go, not for me, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to talk about The Sandman after I've experienced more of it, because it is Neil Gaiman, and I will give it its fair dues, because I love the man. And maybe I will actually get a chance to actually do more things on PlayStation VR than just Beat Saber, which is thoroughly entertaining, and
it's a fun game.
Huh?
It's a fun game.
Oh yeah, who doesn't want to just cut things up to Green Day and lightsabers? It's
a fun game, but you're right. Maybe it was. Well, we'll talk more about this next week. Then we don't want to get ahead of it.
Yes, I've already got another show that I will talk about next time. It is another Amazon show. It is Paper Girls. So there's been some trailers for it. It looks mildly interesting. I'm curious to see what it is.
I would also, it's a teaser. There's another, this last week, I got around to finally seeing A Million Ways to Die in the West on the assistance of Michelle, who said it was good. We'll talk about whether it is or not next week.
All right, there we go. We've got plenty of teasers for next week, where we are going to be talking about our chain movie, Murder by Death, which is available to rent
all across the place. You can rent it on Google Play, YouTube, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft.
There you go. So watch along as well if you want some very old, most likely highly inappropriate, star-studded cast in a comedy. We talked about Guns of Navarone. We talked about Lightyear, Prey, The Prestige, Who's That Girl, The Grey Man, and The Resort. So a bit of a mixed bag of our thoughts on some of those ones. But we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We will probably be back to our usual Wednesday. It's just been a crazy couple of weeks for us, and I've got responsibilities of work that have to...
You get the reveal of my proper space next week, I promise.
You've got to get all of the gold vinyl records on the walls and things like that for million-selling albums, all that stuff.
All of that, and I've got to be allowed out of my room. I swear to God, I'm not just in this room. Think twice for help.
That's what we do for Michelle. And yes, next week we will have the return of the Trek Perspective.
It'll be a double Trek Perspective next week. We'll be talking about Generations and First Contact.
All right. Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe where you watch us, where you listen to us. If you're on Twitch, you can always subscribe and donate to us if you really want to. We do really appreciate it. It certainly helps us. At The Fried Brain and at Evil Trav on the Twitters. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And the podcast gets uploaded on Sundays. Until next time, thank you and good night.